Assalamu alaikum students, hope you will be fine and welcome to my YouTube channel Physics Tutor. Today our lecture is friction. What is friction? What is the different types of friction and some other kinds and types of frictions. We try and study friction. The definition is friction is when we throw a ball on the floor, it starts moving with some velocity. But ideally, no force should be acting in the direction of motion. And according to the Newton first law, the ball should keep rolling, but this does not happen. Instead, the ball stops after moving a certain distance. So a force must be acting on it. We call this force friction. Okay. Next is the definition of friction. Friction is defined as the resistance offered by the surface that are its contact when they move past each other. Friction provides traction that is needed to walk without slipping. Friction is helpful in most cases. However, they also offer a great measure of opposition to the motion. In addition, about 20% of the engine power of automobile is consumed in the overcome the friction forces in moving parts. In the next section, let us go through some of these factors. Factor affecting the frictions. Friction is a force that is depend on external factors. Following are the two fractions on which fraction depend on the nature of the two surfaces that are in contact. Friction is dependent on the smoothness and roughness of the two surfaces that are in contact with each other. When the surface is smooth, the friction between the two reduces as there is no much interlocking of irregularities, while the surface is rough, friction increases on the force that is acting on this surface. Friction increases when the force is applied along with the irregularities. What causes friction? Friction is caused due to the irregularities on two surfaces in contact. So when one object moves over the other, these irregularities on the surface get entangled, giving rise to friction. The more the roughness, the more irregularities and more significant will be the friction. What are the types of friction? There are four friction and they are classified as follows. Static friction, second is sliding friction, the third is rolling friction, and the fourth is fluid friction. All four these types of friction are different from each other. For example, static friction is the friction that act between the surface when they are rest with respect to each other. In contrast, sliding friction is the resistance created between any two objects when sliding against each other. Similarly, understand the nature of different types of friction from the article below. In this article, application of friction is discussed. Friction find application when match scales are generated. Motion of piston in the cylinder is an application of friction. It's possible to write any books and board as there is a friction between pen and the board. Friction problem with solution. Block A is kept on the top of block B. The coefficient of static friction between A and B is 0.6 and between B and ground is 0.5. Also, the coefficient of kinetic friction between the A and B is 0.4 and between B and background is 0.3. If a force of 60 Newton is applied on block B, find the acceleration of both the blocks. Mass of block A is 5 kg and block of B is 10 kg. The solution is below 16 minus F1 is equal to 15A. Since a block B is moving over the surface, hence it is sliding friction. Therefore, in the case, we will use coefficient of friction 0.3, 0.3 multiplied by 15 multiplied by 10n. F1 is equal to 45n. Okay. The next is we will discuss about the frequently asked some question about the friction. How does the friction produce heat? When surfaces in contact move relative to each other, the friction between the two surfaces convert kinetic energy into heat. Okay. And the second question is how is friction useful? Friction help us to walking. For example, friction between the shoes and the floor stop us for sleeping. Similarly, the friction between the car and the road prevent the car from sliding. Why is friction an conservative force? Friction is a non-conservative force between the amount of the work done by the friction depend upon the path. And the next question is, will friction increase as the speed increase? No, friction is not affected by the increase in speed. And the fifth question is, can friction be zero? No, it is possible to have a zero friction because every surface will have minor irregularities no matter have lubricated. So okay, this was the topic of friction, and we have discussed about friction. Hope you will be understand. In the next lecture we will discuss about some other topics. Goodbye.